Hello all and welcome to our weekly series here at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. I'm standing for James this week as we preview Game Week 16, courtesy of Threadmaster and brilliant all-round guy, big man Bakar. Bakar, it's great to see you again. It's been a while. How was your Game Week 15?
Thanks for having me, Fergi. Thanks for the kind words as well. Game week 15 was a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. The last two game weeks haven't really treated me well at all. I had like 43 points this week, which was four less than the top 10K average. And truth be told, the good thing about this period is that game weeks are now coming thick and fast, so I can always look forward to next week and hope to improve on my performances.
It is. Have you kind of not got anyone in particular who's hurt in your rank? Who is the player or two at the moment that every time they score or assist, they kill you? Mine are Smith Rowe and Raphinha. They just seem to be.
Yeah.
I haven't held either, and every time they score, it's like a dagger to the heart.
The main dagger to the heart for me was getting Kane over Son. I mean, in hindsight, it looks like a very poor decision. But honestly, 2 weeks ago when I chose Kane, I thought Kane was the one to go for, and I would have expected them to score similarly. I'm not mad at Son doing well because I expected that to be the case to some extent. But Kane blanking when Spurs have scored like 5 goals in total at home against Brentford and Norwich is massively disappointing. And thankfully, there's an easy move to make for Kane owners this week. We'll come to that.
There is, and it's not so easy for Son owners. So maybe you have your revenge. But yeah, absolutely. 90 minutes. I think in both games, he had shots in target in both games as well. So I think that for owners for Kane, if you look like solely at the output, it hasn't looked great, but it's not like he hasn't been anywhere near. He's been having shots on target. He's been heavily involved in the play. He was involved in the goal for Son against Norwich as well. He played the lovely through ball, to get it crossed in. So yeah, I think if you a bit unfortunate, but revenge maybe around the corner, as we will talk about in a bit. If you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Set the alerts so you don't miss any of our brilliant fancy Premier League content or live streams right here on this channel. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So let's get in it. Let's get into it, Bakar. And who is the first person we are previewing ahead of Game Week 16?
I think it's better if we start from the Brentford Watford fixture, isn't it? I mean, I think Mbeumo. Let's start with him.
Yeah.
A lot of managers have been considering what to do with him. I mean, he's been disappointing. Don't get me wrong. For a lot of managers who owned him, I myself have been very. I was very hopeful that he'd do well, but unfortunately, it hasn't really turned out that way. He gave an assist last week. Personally, I'm giving him another shot this week. Watford's defensive stats aren't the greatest. Mbeumo had 4 shots in the box last week, and he was playing the most advanced, particularly in the absence of Tony. I think he's probably going to be Brentford's focal point to score goals, and I think he should be given another chance this week. He has a 35% chance of scoring according to the odds as well. So I think I'd probably give him this week before selling off before the tougher fixtures kick in.
I think he's been unfortunate. I've held him as well, I think, since game week 9 or 10, and I sold him last week for his assist, but that's just the way it goes. I think the thing for me, just with him, look at him in isolation to pick. I think owners have been incredibly unfortunate. He's hit the post 7 times this season.
Yeah.
Had assists for goals disallowed for Tony and all this sort of thing. I think the thing why I sold him, I wasn't that aggrieved when he got the assist. His ownership is still incredibly low. It's still like 3% or something. So if you do have him and he does bang, absolutely fantastic. But if you don't have him and he doesn't, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, I think I think a hold is probably a good idea there. In the same game on Friday, and something I'm really interested in because I've got to make a decision on this. King v Dennis. It's a massive talking point at the moment. What are your thoughts on this at the moment, Bakar?
A lot of people are in the market for a Tony replacement, like you, Fergie, and this is a question which is one of the most popular ones this week. I'm firmly in the King camp. His stats are more sustainable. He's had a big chance involvements in 4 games out of the 7 he started under Ranieri, and his numbers are almost on par with Salah since game week 9, which is basically when he started playing under Ranieri. Dennis, meanwhile, has been named in his squad for the AFCON as well. in the provisional squad. Let me correct myself. I mean,
Yeah.
there's every chance he misses out some of the upcoming game weeks as well. Even if I take AFCON out of the equation, I look at his numbers and I just don't think they're sustainable. I mean, he scored like 6 goals from an XG of 3.7, 6 assists from an XA of 3.1. Overall, when you look at his XGI, it's 6.9, right? And he's had 12 returns. And that just tells me that's massively unsustainable levels. King is on penalties as well. I firmly think King is the one to go for.
Yeah. I must say, I think I agree, and I always just from like an eye test view, I always prefer the person. I'm sure we'll talk about Ronaldo in a bit, but I always prefer the person who kind of sits up top. You just feel they're going to be involved, don't you? So I think there's that as well. There's the AFCON thing, which is a risk. I personally think maybe a month or so ago, before Dennis kind of truly exploded, you may think that potentially he may not be called up, but just based on his performances alone, at the moment he's probably the best Nigerian the best informed Nigerian forward in the world out there, right? So whereas maybe the start of the season, or even when they picked the squad in November, he wasn't. So
exactly.
I think if it goes ahead, I think he gets caught. I'd be amazed if he didn't. Even a personal rift, shouldn't be enough. So okay, what are we talking about next, Bakar?
Next up is basically the City Mids. Another very interesting discussion this week. Who is the best Man City midfielder to get? So, in my opinion, if you own either Bernardo Silva, Foden, Gundogan, I just think it's an easy move to keep them. Even if Foden is ruled out this week, which I don't think will be the case because reports are coming in that he's likely to be fine. But even if we assume that he's out, I still think I'd hold on to Foden. I think the more pertinent question is who is the one to buy at this point in time, and if you own neither of the three, then I think the safest move is to buy Bernardo. I mean, his stats aren't the greatest. In fact, I don't think they are sort of they rival some of the other midfielders that are in play at the moment. But he's in the form of his life. He's playing really well. He's getting into good positions. Everything he touches is turning to gold, and the fact that he was rested in midweek.
Yeah.
Now that tells me that he's likely to start all the league games going ahead. So if you're buying one this week, I think Bernardo's the safest to get because he's likely to start the next three. When you look at the stats, I personally think Foden is the one to go for over the longer term, but we're not sure about his injury. Gundogan's stats were impressive as well against Watford. He had two big chance involvements, but the problem there is the fact that De Bruyne has now recovered from COVID and he's back to playing. So with De Bruyne back, it might be sort of a risk to Gundogan. Even if Gundogan does end up playing with De Bruyne, he might play a bit deeper, which isn't ideal for FPL. So I think if you're picking one this week, then Bernardo is the one to go for.
Just a couple of words on Grealish. So obviously he played last week, and Sterling has been on form as well. I know Sterling is very expensive, but if you look at Sterling's stats, as I'm sure you've had, they are absolutely fantastic. Over the last 3 or 4 game weeks since he's been playing. Would you be tempted by Sterling at all over Foden or Bernardo if money was no object?
I would be, but money is an object. That's the problem.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. So that's why I just think it makes sense to probably wait till at least midweek. If Foden is fit in midweek, I mean, I think that Man City versus Leeds in midweek is the one to target because Leeds are absolutely decimated with injuries coming into this weekend. And I think if that continues to be the case, then whoever looks like starting the Leeds fixture will be the one to go for.
Fantastic. Another interesting debate at the moment. Obviously, lots of people have been on Chelsea defence for a while, and people are still thinking of, whether to buy more or whatever else. But I've been a bit more so I'm on the double up at the moment. But I do have a plan to get rid of definitely one, and if not both, in the coming 5 or 6 game weeks. Bakar, what's your take on the Chelsea defenders at the moment?
I think I'd hold on to onto the Chelsea defense for at least the next 2 fixtures. Leeds at home, as I just said, they're decimated with injuries at the moment. Then Everton at home is another good fixture for the Chelsea defense, and I think they will sort themselves out very soon. especially given the fixture difficulty. They should be fine. I'd expect Reece, Rudiger, Alonso to be in the points in the weeks to come. After that, I think it's a different scenario, because when you look at their fixtures from game week 18 onwards in particular, that's Wolves away, Villa away, Brighton at home, Liverpool, Man City, Spurs, then they have a blank, right? So I think give the double up at least another couple of weeks, and then it's time to reassess that, because it's also worth mentioning that Mendy will be gone for the AFCON soon as well. So so the double up might become a bit of a problem going forward.
In terms of Chelsea conceding 6 goals in their last 2 games now, just as an example, I know they put out a largely second string on Wednesday, but you still think it would be enough to deal with Zenit. But is that a concern, because Chelsea's XGC over the season hasn't been probably as good as a lot of people think? They've gone through large periods of the season being mid-table in terms of expected goals conceded. Do you think it's a case of that has caught up with them, or do you just think it's just a bit of recent form? Or
I think it's been a case of recent form and injuries, to be honest, Fergi, because I agree that their XGC hasn't really been in line this season with some of the numbers we saw under Tuchel last season.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at their XGC from game week 7 or game week 8 onwards in particular, it's largely improved. And I personally think that it's worth giving them an extended run ahead of these fixtures. I mean, in the past few weeks, particularly against United, where Jorginho made an error, I believe they were firmly unlucky in that game as well, because they restricted United to just the one shot in the box, which was basically the Jorginho error.
Yeah.
And then they rotated heavily against Watford. Things haven't really been falling for them, but I expect now with the fixtures to come, they'll probably do well.
Okay. Next, we move on to someone who I took out early and has since got 3 returns, but Raphinha. Obviously, he's been fantastic this season, as a lot, including yourself, predicted at the start of the season, Bakar. But now they do run into absolutely stinking fixtures, and obviously, I think we've had news that Bamford may be out for a little while. Calvin Phillips is going to be out for a while. What are your thoughts now?
Rodrigo as well.
And Rodrigo. So, what are your thoughts on people holding Raphinha? Should they just is now the time to sell?
I think that it's time to take the points and run, honestly, because the next 4 fixtures: Chelsea away, City away, Arsenal at home, Liverpool away. You can't really get a tougher run than that. I mean, there is the possibility now that he might be on penalties, but with that kind of a run, I don't think it's worth holding on to him at all. I'd be very surprised if Leeds perform well in the fixtures to come. And in fact, I'd be amazed if they even score in the next 2-3 games as well. So I personally would jump to someone like a Bowen or even Bernardo if I had the funds to do so.
It's not very nice having to play Chelsea and Man City both away from home in 4 days either, is it? I think they're going to be in for a bit of a torrid time. So moving now off someone whose points we're going to take, or about someone who could have plenty of points to come, and this is Ollie Watkins. What's your take on Ollie Watkins?
I think he's worth monitoring. I don't think it's the time to buy him this week, because obviously they're playing against Liverpool. But after this fixture, Villa have Norwich away and then Burnley at home, right? So I mean, I think he could do well. I've noticed some of the numbers, and he's had a big chance involvement in 3 of Gerrard's 4 fixtures.
Yeah.
And he's done well. His numbers have been on the rise, which wasn't really the case early on in the season. He's the one player I've sort of picked out who's sort of really benefited from the arrival of Gerrard. I think he could be one worth looking at, particularly for those who are in the market for a Tony replacement. I mean, if you can afford to bench him this week, then he's an excellent option going forward.
Who would you prefer out of Watkins and King for this week?
For this week, I would go with King. I think overall King is the slightly better option because of the savings he gets you, and his numbers have been very impressive as well. So I'd probably back King over Watkins, given the extra 2 million saving.
Okay. And next we move on to a potential revelation from Rangnick over the last few weeks. But Diogo Dalot has started the last couple of games and has performed very, very well, Bakar.
Very, very well. And when you look at United, he's a considerable improvement from Wan-Bissaka. When you look at attacking output, he has a good cross on him. He's played well recently. I think he could be worth monitoring given how good United's fixtures are, and given his price of only like 4.4. I mentioned that it might be time to just jump off the Chelsea double up in a couple of game weeks time. I think Dalot is someone who I'm targeting in very soon. I think it makes sense to give him like 1 or 2 game weeks to sort of assess his performances, and if he looks good, then I think he's a very good option to have. I mean, United have looked considerably better under Rangnick, and you can see in the way they're playing, and it's clear that they've worked on their defense and they're making some improvements in that sector. And I can feel a new manager bounce is well and truly on the cards in the league.
Yeah, I agree. And listening to his comments last week, he, obviously not word for word, but he said something along the lines of, "We're always going to score, so all the focus is on not conceding." So obviously, which bodes very, very well for the defense. I think I'm interested in De Gea this week myself, so I'm quite excited about that, because if that's the mentality, we know we'll score goals, so let's focus on keeping them out. You can see a fair few clean sheets, and
especially with the fixtures. I mean, the fixtures are
incredible for 13 game weeks on the trot. They're unreal.
Exactly.
Just on Wan-Bissaka, obviously, who has in previous seasons, it's probably fair to say, has been really good for United. Hasn't quite done it this year. He did go off injured. He had a collision with a billboard late last night, and he was stretchered off. I did see a report last night to say that he's going to be, he's bumped his wrist and bumped his knee, but he thinks he'll be fine for the weekend. So I think, I think your suggestion of maybe taking a look over the next 2 game weeks, if Dalot starts, both of Wan-Bissaka on the bench, it pretty much looks like he could be the new first choice. An incredibly exciting option there. Bakar,
exactly. Especially now that they kept a clean sheet against Palace last week.
Yes.
This just adds more sort of reliability to the fact that he might keep on starting.
And staying with Man United, and this is something I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on, Bakar, because I've got this dilemma this week. A certain Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not sure if you've heard of him before. Cristiano Ronaldo. A lot of people will be moving Kane to Ronaldo. I've got Son, so I've got a dilemma to make. Do I, because there's all the players you've already mentioned, players like King, Bernardo, etc. Would you be advising getting Ronaldo in ahead of game week 16?
This is something I've been wavering on as well. At the start of the week, even when Kane blanked against Norwich, I wasn't exactly set on getting Ronaldo. I didn't think he was someone who was going to represent value. That still might be the case, but it was basically down to the fact that I was considering that, given how easy City's fixtures are in the weeks to come, I was considering a City double up. But now the fact that Foden is nursing an ankle injury, he might miss the odd game here or there. And the fact that, the rest of the midfield options, for example, we've spoken about Bernardo, Bowen, Jota, they're not exactly pricey, right? So where are you going to spend the cash? I mean, the value only comes into consideration where you have, better options to spend elsewhere. But now that when you come to think of it, I don't really see where I'd spend the cash. So I think Ronaldo with those fixtures, I personally believe that he would love to play against some of the deep blocks that United have in the weeks to come. I mean, you look at the fixtures, there's Norwich, Brentford, Burnley, Newcastle, Brighton. I mean, those are exactly the kind of fixtures I would expect Ronaldo to feast against. And the fact that he was rested yesterday, it just turned my head. And that's why now I think that, okay, the value argument is probably out of the window, because I don't know where else I'd spend the money. So might as well get Ronaldo and hope for the best. I think he's likely to start the next few fixtures. And as I said, I think United will go through a new manager bounce as well.
That word, Bakar, you just used then gave me a tingle in my stomach. Feast, positively feast on these defences. My goodness, yeah. I was looking at some stats this time last year, playing playing in Italy, and he did start a lot of games, and he did score in a lot of matches as well. So it's not like he's an old man who needs kind of managing. He's fit as a fiddle, and as you say, the fact he's rested last night. Next two games, Norwich and Brentford, so Spurs just had an aggregate score of 5-0 over them. If Ronaldo gets 2 goals and an assist, across those games, you're probably getting really good value, aren't you? So just a question for you on my team then. So would you go for Ronaldo and Bowen, or King and Bernardo? I've already got Foden.
Ronaldo and Bowen.
Oh, you can't say it like that. You can't say it like an absolute no-brainer.
I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close.
Really?
I don't think it's close. I'm very confident that Bowen, especially with West Ham's fixtures, and Ronaldo with his fixtures, are likely to do really well in the weeks to come. Bernardo will continue to tick along, don't get me wrong, and so will King. But I just think the ceiling that the likes of Ronaldo and Bowen have is higher.
I'm inclined to agree. You've changed my plans for the whole week now, Bakar. But thank you. This is why I love doing these videos with you. Absolutely love it.
I mean, you know who to blame now that
I will.
Wrong.
I can come on.
I mean, I was sat here a couple of weeks ago advocating Kane, so you better not listen to me.
I didn't go with Kane on that one, but yeah. You'll be avoiding me for a few weeks. You'll be no, please bring James back if it doesn't happen this weekend. So next we're just gonna touch on the COVID situation at Spurs. Obviously incredibly sad for everyone involved there. I think the latest we've seen that there's been, I think 15 positive tests across the club in total. Like most of them are playing staff, and there's obviously some who are backroom staff. They've shut the training ground. As we record now, the game against Brighton hasn't been postponed, but I don't know what you, Bakar, I would be absolutely flabbergasted if the games against Brighton and Leicester went ahead.
Exactly. It looks, particularly the one against Brighton, it looks as good as done. And, we haven't had official confirmation yet, but it's in serious danger. I think it's time to jump off all Spurs assets if you have them. I'll come to each one by one. I think for Kane, I think Ronaldo is the obvious replacement. With Son, you can, if you want to sort of get a midfielder, I would probably go with one of Ronaldo or Bowen this week. But having said that, I still think it's better to sort of find a way to Ronaldo, like with your team, where your structure is such that you're playing 5 in midfield. But if you can sort of maneuver your way, I think Ronaldo is the one to get. As far as Reguilon is concerned, I think Dalot, I've already mentioned, is one I'd look at. Yeah. And for Sanchez, I think Ramsdale or De Gea are the two I'd seriously consider. Because Ramsdale has looked really good as well. He's really good with saves and bonus points whenever Arsenal are to keep a clean sheet. And even if they don't keep a clean sheet, he's usually done well with saves. So I personally think he's the one to get. If you want to sort of go with the differential, then I love your De Gea shot. I think he's very likely to do well as well.
You have to feel for FPL managers, because players like Sanchez, and people have got the backup keeper in Steele. Plenty have brought in players like Lamptey.
Exactly.
Some went for Trossard and Mopai. Obviously, it's loads of people have got Kane, Son, Reguilon, etc. You have to feel for for managers who've got 5 or 6.
Some have Sanchez and Foster, which look perfectly good on paper. Now Foster's in
exactly. That's what I've got.
That's highly unfortunate. Yeah. That's highly unfortunate.
We just have to deal with it, right? And just shift our team accordingly. I did see a team earlier on Twitter who had 3 Spurs, 2 Brighton, Ivan Toney, and someone else, and they were thinking of a free hitting, which I got to be honest, I don't think that's a bad shout. But you say that, you never know if Spurs going to be back the next game week, do you? So you don't know whether to just take a load of hits to get him out for it. It's just it's so unfortunate for managers when this kind of thing happens. But over the last 2 years, it's happened time and again, haven't it?
Exactly. I mean, these are the kind of things which aren't really in your control. You can't do much about.
Exactly. So next, briefly, so you've mentioned Bowen, but you wanted to talk a bit about Antonio and Bowen.
Yeah, I think I'm all set on having the double up in the weeks to come. I think if you don't own Bowen right now, you can probably afford to wait till game week 18.
Yeah.
When you look at West Ham's fixtures, Norwich, Southampton, Watford, Crystal Palace, Leeds, after game week 18. Now that is a beautiful run of fixtures to have. I know that Antonio's stats have dropped of late. They aren't that great, but I think West Ham will be on a high now, having beaten Chelsea, and I expect them to do well against Burnley as well. If you don't own, Antonio or Bowen, I would be making plans to bring them in into your teams. Bowen in particular has had really impressive stats since game week 5. Among midfielders, only Salah, Mane, and Jota have had a better XGI, which just tells you, everything you need to know. Bowen is playing almost like an inside forward. He's getting a lot of the big chances. He's making those runs in behind, and he's actually benefiting more than Antonio because he's sort of getting into those better positions and he's getting the better opportunities in recent times. So I think that double up could be very viable, and especially at 6.5, Bowen, I don't really see any reason to overlook him.
He looks as good as option now potentially as Raphinha did in game week 1. In terms of the price point, in terms of the potential, and he's playing a lot more forward. He's basically playing as a striker, isn't he? So I think he's one definitely looking to bring in. And finally, you just wanted to touch on a hero so far, but maybe he's dropped off a little bit. But his fixtures are looking good. Conor Gallagher.
I own him, Fergi, and I don't exactly know what to do with him because
it's a tough one.
A couple of weeks ago he looked like one of the best midfield options around in that price range. But since that injury to MacArthur, he's sort of dropped into a more defensive role where he isn't really making those sort of runs which he was making earlier. I think what to do or not to do with him depends firmly on the MacArthur news. Apparently, there's news that he's back in training and he's likely to be available this weekend. If that is the case, then I think it's worth holding on to Gallagher because his numbers when MacArthur was playing were incredible because he was sort of making those runs in behind. He was creating big chances. He was taking set pieces as well in the absence of Milivojevic. So I think he could do really well. And Everton's defensive stats are the worst in the league in terms of the big chances they've conceded over the past 6 to 7 fixtures. They're conceding around 3 big chances a game, which is really, really bad. And I think this is a fixture which I'd expect Palace to do well in.
Fantastic. Okay, so that is it from us for this week. Thank you so much, Bakar. It's always an absolute pleasure speaking with you. If you don't follow Bakar on Twitter, make sure you do @BigManMakar. And if you like what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok are @FFH_HQ, and our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for Fantasy Premier League and Fantasy Football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, including Bakar's, points predictions tools, and much, much more. To join the tens of thousands of other fantasy managers, sign up to the hub. Choose all our amazing resources. Just click the top link in the description below. We'll be back next week. A crazy week. Crazy week now, Bakar. I think there's 6 game weeks in 20 days. Absolutely.
This is the most important time of the season, I think. This is where I think where the cream gets separated from the rest. So it's very important to do well.
Expecting a rise from you then, Bakar. And I'm not talking about Chris Wood either. We will be back next week previewing the coming game weeks. Goodbye for now.